Hi, everyone. I'm going to assume that you can hear me. And my name is Catharine Fennell, and I am the CEO and founder of videoBIO Recruiter. Funny story, and I know we're just getting started, but if anybody's listening at this moment, if you're hearing a little bit of background noise, it's because in my neighbor's yard, they are cutting down a very, very large tree. And they did promise me that at 3 o'clock on the nose, they would be stopping on my behalf. It's quite the endeavor that I've been watching for the last 3 days, and I'm really hoping that they will stay true to the word and stop making noise very shortly, because I'm certain that you can hear some of that in the background. So we will proceed in any case, and I'm sure in any moment the noise will subside, and that will be fantastic. So I'm very pleased to be speaking to you today at the Canadian Recruiters Conference in a virtual environment, taking all the background noise potentially into account. And today I'm going to be talking to you about shifting to digital interviewing in the virtual workplace. And my name is Catharine Fennell. I'm the CEO of videoBIO Recruiter. For those of you who weren't in the last few minutes, I just mentioned quickly that there is a little bit of background noise that should be gone momentarily. I do apologize for that. They are cutting down a very large tree in the backyard of my neighbor's house, but they have promised me that they are going to stop right at 3 o'clock. So we'll see if they do that. So let's get started. This is a really a great opportunity to have to talk to you about what's happening in the virtual workplace. And I'm sure we're all familiar with hearing expressions like "thanks to COVID." This is what we're looking at in our offices. I personally am sitting here in my home office, as is my entire team. And none of us are actually at the workplace, or very few of us are at the corporate workplace right now. So we're seeing a lot of empty desks. We're all paying a lot of rent for places that we're not in. And that's changing everything in terms of the virtual workforce and all of our practices and how we address talent and recruiting in this new world. We're also sitting in front of cameras like this every day. I personally can't see myself right now, which I prefer. I'm looking at my slides. I think we're all getting a little weary of being in front of a camera. I don't think any of us are entirely accustomed to looking at ourselves on camera all day, as we do now in these video conferencing calls. But on the other hand, what it has done is really gotten everybody very comfortable with video interviewing, being in front of a camera, and just generally talking to a camera like I am right now to you, without somebody physically in my space. So we are learning these great skills, and these are the skills that are required in a digital interview. So thanks to COVID for that. So many things have changed, while at the same time, many things haven't changed as it relates to recruiting and interviewing. We're all, as employers, seeking these wide range of skills in the ideal candidate. We're looking for more and more in a candidate. They're bringing more to the table. They can bring more attributes and competencies to the role. And now with the virtual workplace, we're adding on to that, looking for things that are skills that make somebody even more effective, perhaps in the home-based environment, in a virtual workforce environment, which are layering on a new set of expectation and skills that we're looking for in the candidates that we are seeking to hire. In addition to that, we are seeing more and more employers shifting to competency-first hiring practices. And really what that means is we're not just looking now at resumes and skills and previous experiences in the workforce. We're now looking to what can this person bring? Attitudinally, can they be trained? How do they reason and make decisions? What are their capabilities? What is the whole set of skills and character even that a candidate brings to work? And that includes even things like values and how somebody will look at, is somebody trustworthy? Are they a high performer? There are many things that employers are now testing for in the interviewing process that are becoming more and more important in the evaluation of whether they will be a good fit candidate. So naturally, given all of these things, we're shifting to a digital screening, interviewing, and assessment process. Whether we want to or not, we are going to be in the virtual workplace for many, many months, if not years to come. And that means that we need to audit and take a real look at our overall recruiting and interviewing and screening practices and how we can digitize those and reduce face-to-face impact to keep everybody healthy, to consider working from home, and to be able to do all of this in a digital world without losing the human impact. And the benefit of video certainly is that we can do both of those things together. We can have digital hiring practices while at the same time still have the human factor and meet people online. In addition, we are seeing the rise of the need for standardization. And this is largely because we are trying to reduce bias in our hiring practices, and we are trying to hire more diversely. We know that diverse teams are more successful, they're more profitable, and there's never been more attention on diversity than we have today. So the benefit of digitization is that we can standardize our hiring practices and also involve more people in our team in the process of evaluating and hiring practices and making decision based on candidates using a common set of attributes and measures. Transparency is really critical when we're looking at how we are evaluating candidates. It needs to be defensible, the decisions that we're making. Everybody needs to be able to add their evaluation and share that widely across a common set of measures. And we need to be looking at people as well as practices and technology in helping us achieve this need for defensibility in the decisions that we make, as well as ultimate transparency in how we're going about making those decisions. And that doesn't just apply to technology, where transparency and bias is really critical, but also humans and subjectivity. And so with the digitization practices that we have available to us now with digital interviewing and screening processes, we can actually apply a lot of those best practices in terms of transparency, collaboration in decision-making, and defensibility, and really carrying a digital record across a series of screens and interviews that can be looked at, it can be reviewed, and you can use that as a way to defend the evaluation process in making a decision about a candidate. So when you're looking at digital screening and interviewing overall, this really, the benefit is that it allows you to do structured interviewing and standardizing your entire assessment process. Candidates are really looking, particularly with digital interviewing, to feel that they are being given the same opportunity as everybody else in terms of the questions that they're being asked, the technology that they're using to answer, the amount of time that they're given to respond, and the overall settings in terms of accessibility and access to that technology. And so using a digital interviewing system allows you to create that structure with common questions, common settings and practices, as well as the ability to take those responses and share them with a wider hiring team and collaborate in those decisions as you go about reviewing, evaluating, and shortlisting. So as an example, as part of a video interviewing system, you have scorecards, digital scorecards that can be used across hiring teams to review candidates and specific measures. In this case, what you're seeing on the screen is At the bottom, you can put in what it is, the measures that you're looking to evaluate for any given role. And then you can score each candidate based on those measures, and then share that with other people on your team who can also score using the same measures. And it will aggregate and average everybody's results, as well as any team comments that you will see, which will be identified and to whoever it is that made that comment. So you may be wondering, when I think about video interviewing, how is it that video reduces bias? Well, we'll talk about this in a minute, but one of the elements that is really important is that video interviews can be delivered in any media format that you like. So it's really a digital platform allowing for a variety of different one-way and live interview formats. But as a recruiter, you can set up the system to identify how you would like a candidate to answer. So you can give them the opportunity to answer as an audio response, or you can stipulate that it's an audio response. In addition, you can even run a blind interview through the video interviewing system where there's no video. The results are based on audio, and there is automatic scoring based on the content of what the candidate says. So in this case, you can actually have a candidate go through an entire process without having any subjectivity applied, being able to look at a score on a candidate without looking at their name or even their gender or any personally identifiable information. So let's take a look at the standard recruiting flow as we turn our focus now to what are the elements of a video interviewing system and digital interviewing in general, and how would that lay over or complement a current recruiting flow. So in a standard recruiting flow, you start with the application and resume screen. So you're going to post your job through a job marketplace, to a job board, or to a career site. And then you are going to do a short list from a resume screen. And so that's a very common first step. Then you're going to move on to the phone screen. So from a short list, you're going to have to go through a process of scheduling a series of phone screens. And that, we know, takes quite a bit of time on the part of the team to actually run the scheduling, get everybody lined up, and then conduct the phone screens, which are typically about 30 minutes a piece. Then you potentially could have any number of next steps after that phone screen, depending on how many steps you have in your workflow. If you're looking at a company like Amazon.com, they have upwards of 20 interview steps before they make an offer. So this third step could really be multiple steps depending on how many tests or assessments you have a candidate go through. But this could be situational questions, behavioral questions. This could be a psychometric test. This could be a realistic job preview or a case study. And that could be multiple stages. And then finally, what's typical is you would then move to a face-to-face interview. So you're going to invite that candidate in, you're going to conduct one or more face-to-face interviews and potentially group interviews or panel interviews as well. So that is what a standard recruiting flow, recruiting and interviewing workflow look like. So now let's lay over video interviewing systems or digital interviewing systems. So along the top, you can see your standard without video flow. Now let's talk about how video gets introduced to these various different stages. In the first step, you can add a question or series of questions directly to that application. So you could have an embedded experience where you've added questions to an application, for example, and you've invited a candidate to submit their resume as well as answer 1, 2, or 3 questions and submit. You could also have that as part of a resume plus video question process, which would be a seamless process for the candidates, so they can click through in a modern browser that would activate a camera just like we have right here, no uploads or downloads, and record in the answers and submit. That's all the underlying technology that makes it very seamless. So more and more we're seeing employers move to introduce questions, video questions at the first stage. So they're learning more than just what comes from a resume. They're getting more first stage questions in video format. Now, moving on to the second stage, you've got your phone screen. So what we see most commonly here is this being swapped out for a one-way video interview. Now, this is highly beneficial when it comes to efficiency, because with a one-way video interview, you can create a questionnaire for that particular job role, which could have 2 or 6 questions, as many as you like. You can stipulate how you want them to respond in video or audio, or you can give them the option. And then you set the deadline. So you give them a week or 3 days to answer, and they are invited by email, so they get the invitation to their email. So this gives them the chance to really respond anytime from the privacy of their home, without having to go through a scheduling process. So that benefits you, it benefits them, it's highly convenient. They can answer from their phone or their computer. And then you don't have to review those responses until the deadline. So then you can sit down at your dashboard, you can look at all of the candidates that you've invited to participate in this one-way interview and review all of their responses. So if you think about that, it's going to save you a good 25 minutes or more when you factor in the actual scheduling time that you applied with the phone screen. So that's a significant time savings. It's also significantly beneficial to the candidate. So then moving on to the next, we have what could be a behavioral assessment or any other type of interview that could be replaced with a video interview. So in the case of our platform, you can deliver questions with text answers, multiple choice answers, video responses, or audio responses. So you can really deliver any kind of behavioral assessment through a digital platform. And so this can be applied using the same process as the one-way interview, where the questions are created, that's sent out to the candidates, and then they will respond, and you can review the responses when they come in. And then finally, the face-to-face interview is just like we're doing here, replaced with a live video interview. So you're having a one-to-one or a one-to-many environment where you can run live panel interviews, you can run one-to-one face-to-face interviews on video, you can record those sessions, you can have multiple interviewers, or you could have multiple interviewees or candidates. And all of those sessions can be recorded. They're easily scheduled. They can be scheduled by the candidates, where you don't even need to get involved in the scheduling process. And then once you've saved that recording, you also have that record of that video interview, which you can share among, again, your hiring team, just the same way you would your one-way interview and your video assessments, and use the same scorecards, the same rubrics, the same measurements across all of the digital hiring process for that particular role. So everything's very easily accessible. It's a great way to be able to collect and aggregate everybody's results in terms of the evaluation process. And then you have a digital record of that, all in the cloud, that's accessible from your dashboard to be able to share based on your hiring decision making. So to summarize, the 3 main types of video or digital, and I like to say digital because it's really not so much about just video now. It's really about video, audio, text, blind interviews. They can all be delivered through a digital interviewing system. So first stage, you're typically delivering a video application. So it's a video embedded application or resume process. So we're never going to go just with a resume. Now we're going to add a video interview or a video questioning component to this first step. Second step would be video assessment and screening, and then finally live interviews and meetings like this. But you can do that, of course. You can introduce a live video interview at any stage of your hiring practice. That can be used right away after the first stage if you like. It's really up to you how you want to build out your recruiting and interviewing and workflow. So now I would like to take a few minutes to just talk through the setting up for digital interviewing process and some of the things that you want to be looking at as you're thinking about preparing yourself for hiring and the systems that you will be using for hiring in a virtual workforce. So some of you might be saying, well, I don't really see myself doing any hiring in the next couple of months because everything has really been slowed down due to COVID. So, but with wage subsidies, some of you may be seeing an uptick, and depending on the industry that you're in, you may be just bumping along and still very much in step with your hiring processes. So in any case, you do need to shift your attention to looking at digital screening and interviewing, how you're going to adopt that into your overall process. So the first thing that you want to be looking at is at what steps do you want to introduce digital screening and interviewing overall? So we spent a little bit of time there talking about where digital interviewing could be inserted in your process to complement the other steps that you're going through or to replace those steps depending on how you will be moving forward. So give some thought and some time to what it is that you want to do, where you want to introduce digital interviewing, and at what stages. This is a great opportunity for you to look at your overall standardization of your interviewing and evaluation practices. You can start to put together very structured question templates for your varying different roles that you're hiring for. You can have standard scorecard measures that you're applying for those different jobs, as well as different competency-based assessments that you can run through the digital interviewing system, and have all of those templates pre-built in advance to make your process really quite efficient. So when you know you're hiring a project manager, you would select the template associated with that project manager role, and that would carry with it the questions as well as all of those application settings that you had already built in terms of how many re-record options, whether it's audio or video, whether it's a blind interview, the scorecard attached. Then the third point here is increasing collaboration, transparency, and defensibility in the measurement and evaluation. So that is, how can I look at involving more people in the way we make decisions in terms of our practice of decision making and the measures we're looking at, as well as how can I have more collaboration? So the benefit of the digital interviewing system is it makes it very easy to share digital interview responses among the team. So you want to decide, what is my team going to look like? What are the various different roles that they are going to have when using these digital interviewing system? Are they going to be working throughout the process? Are they going to be involved in setting up at the front end, setting up the interviews in the first stage? Or are they going to be more involved in the actual assessment and collaboration? Next, we have the candidate experience, rights, and disclosures in digital interviewing. So I will go into a little bit more detail on this just in the last few minutes. But what's really essential here is that, particularly as you're shifting to digital environments in your hiring practices, you need to really be thinking about the candidate experience as well as the candidate rights as it relates to their consent and the waivers and the communication that you provide in the overall process. And I'll go into a little bit more detail there. Number 5 is technology. So naturally, you need to be looking at, do I have the right technology to be able to deliver digital interviewing and software as a service and integrate that directly into my workflow? So systems like software as a service, like the platform that we offer, for example, is very turnkey in the sense that you can use it out of the box, just with a subscription and an account, or you can have that integrated directly into your applicant tracking system or your HRS system of record. So you can work seamlessly integrating the digital interviewing practices into what you're accustomed to with your current system. And then finally, you want to be thinking about communicating your process very specifically to candidates so they know what to expect. So for example, as you're shifting to digital interviewing practices, it's a good idea in that first experience that you have, that first touch point that you have with a candidate, to let them know, hey, this is what we're doing. We're moving to digital interviewing practices. That means that we're going to be introducing video interviewing and giving you the option to respond in video and audio. So however you want to set it up. But it's important to explain to candidates what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what they can expect. And then that really makes them really comfortable with going through the steps because they know what to expect in the process and how they're going to be interacting with you in a human and digital way. So let's take a minute now on candidate disclosures and options in video interviewing. So as you're inviting candidates into the process of interviewing, here are a few things that you can make available to them. The first is the option to record in audio only. So this is a really important, and we highly recommend that you always make this available to them, and you can stipulate it as well, that they have the option to respond not just in video, but in audio if they choose. They also, you want to provide them the option to re-record and review their responses before submitting. That is something that makes them more comfortable coming into a technology use experience, so that if there were something that happened in that, like having somebody in your backyard cutting down trees and there's some noise in the background, you can re-record that response. And that way, you know, you're going to be able to put your best foot forward. And that's great for candidates. The option to review results if requested. So that's important that candidates know they can enter into this process, but if they choose to want to look at what their results are, that's something that they can ask for. Again, this is something that we build into the waiver and consent that all candidates need to digitally accept before moving into a video interview. So the right to consent prior to commencing an interview. Again, a candidate needs to know what they're moving into, and they need to consent that they are giving their data, in this case, video or audio data, to you to review among your hiring team. So they do need to consent to that as they're entering that process. So you want to look for that to be built in. The option to opt out and request an alternate interview method is always something that you want to make available to candidates. So you can't force anybody to do a video interview or an audio interview or a digital interview. You always want to give them the option to say, I'm not comfortable, or I prefer an alternate video format, or excuse me, interview format. That's something that that you can make available to them, and you make that available right at the front with their options and the contact information. And the option to request a recall or delete submission from the record. So that's another standard clause now that we make available to candidates. So again, they can ask to see the results as well as ask to have their records deleted from your storage or hosted environment. We recommend in the waivers, which we also provide as built-in, that you clearly disclose your practices for the term of HR record storage, and that gets made available up front. So typically you could say this will stay in a hosted environment for 3 months post-fall, and then we hold on to digital records for 1 year in storage. And something to that effect is usually a best practice. It can be, many companies will say we do auto delete through the system 3 months post-fill, so nothing is carried beyond that. And then we have customers, of course, that have 8-year record terms. So it really is, it varies quite widely. And then, of course, candidates have the right to standardized, transparent measurement. So that's important, again, that you can communicate to candidates right up front. This is why we're introducing video interviewing. This is the benefit to you. We can promise and ensure that your experience is the same experience that you will be that every other candidate will be receiving, with the same questions, the same technology, the same settings. And that really goes a long way to build trust with candidates, and making those disclosures up front are very important. So as you can see with the video interviewer assessment, this is somewhat of the experience that a candidate would have, whether they're answering it in a one-way or environment on a camera, through a computer, or through a mobile device. It's really quite accessible and friendly from the candidate's perspective. And that brings me to the end of our half an hour together. So it's really been a pleasure to introduce to you some ideas and maybe some new things that you hadn't heard about, what a video or digital interviewing process can allow for you. And I do want to encourage you to reach out to me if you have questions. My email here is at the bottom of the screen. And on our website at videoBIOrecruiter.com, in the webinar section, you have access to quite a few podcasts related to diversity and candidate rights, as well as online demonstrations that may be of interest if you're looking for a little bit more detail on the digital interviewing workflow and practices. So thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.